from the noise. Tom Dannatt, the founder and CEO of Street Child, the international children's charity, was in Davos for the forum. I spoke to him earlier and he told me why the organisation is needed.
Street Child is an organisation that works in 20 of the poorest and most disaster-affected countries in the world, with a focus on getting children out of school into school. And there are 60 million children of primary school-going age who are out of school in the world, and hundreds of millions of children who are in school and learning very little. Those are our two core issues. And Davos is a meeting of the rich, the famous, governments. It's a concentration of the world's power. And so, we went to Davos this year, as we have done for the last 4 years, to go and make the case for the world's most powerful to give a little bit of their attention to the situation of the world's weakest, really, children who are on a track not to get any education at all, which is the core purpose of a Street Child. So, the Street Child, myself and a couple of colleagues were there from Monday to Friday, and it was it was a busy week.
Yeah, I bet it was. So tell me a little bit about how much can actually be done at the forum. What types of conversations are you able to have, and who with?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, Davos is a melting pot. Like I say, governments, business, celebrities, and you've got the official core business of the forum. That's the stuff you see on the telly, Trump giving speeches and all the others. Beyond that, think of it as a massive marketplace. Davos is this ski town. I think about 10,000 people live there normally, and every restaurant, bar, shop is turned over for the week. Different corporations, organizations hire them out, put on their own sub-events, and you get invited to those, or if you don't get invited, you try and work your way in if you think there'll be people there, or you put your own ones, and there's a lot of energy and effort that goes into, particularly an organization like Street Child. You're not going to be at the sort of center of things naturally, so you need to kind of work your angles. But if people start early, they events finish very late. So if you're energetic and you know what you want to achieve, then you can bump into virtually anyone, with the exception of the head of state of a big country. And from Street Child's perspective, we did a number of events we put on ourselves, focusing on the impact of climate change on the destruction of education infrastructure when cyclones or heavy winds destroy schools and children lose learning time that way. We put on an event focusing on how if we actually empower mothers to earn more, then they will send their children to school. And the main reason why children don't go to school in Africa is simply because of poverty, and you can grow household income levels. And we attracted, a range of influential people to those events. And we went along to other people's, as I say, sometimes by invitation and sometimes through the back door, because that's kind of how you have to move when you're trying to make a case, which isn't the natural topic of the day. The topic of the day, in a lot of people's minds was Trump and Greenland and boards of peace and all the rest.
Yeah, it must be quite frustrating sometimes when a lot of these headlines are on things that aren't necessarily going to impact, I guess, the most amount of people, albeit they are very, very important to discuss as well. In terms of what's going on in the world right now, the US, after the World Economic Forum last year, slashed its aid budget. Other governments like the UK, they followed suit as well. So how has that, or what sort of impact has that had on international aid spending? What's been the knock-on effect of that?
The impact has been super dramatic of these aid cuts, in both the scale and the speed. So in the area of education, which, as I said, is Street Child's principal focus, UNICEF estimates that there'll be between 25 and 30% less money flowing towards education as an issue in 2026 as opposed to 2024. So that tells you kind of right there then. And look, all these issues flow together. So obviously there's a very legitimate impulse towards spending more on defence. I think one of the the mood in WEF and in all the European delegations, and you read about it in the press, it is very clearly we're moving in the direction of spending more on defence. So the question is, where is this money going to come from? When Britain cut its own aid budget very significantly at the start of 2025, money was moved explicitly from the aid budget to defence. Organisations like Street Child will say that is a very short-term, short-sighted move. We need to find ways that we can do both these things at the same time, because I don't think that we make a safer world in the long term. And WEF and Davos, you have this, lots of people talk about being visionaries. I don't think there's anything visionary about turning our back on the world's sort of poorest, couple of 100 million people and saying we're just going to leave you to yourselves. This is the tinderbox for the next disease or war or whatever. The right thing to do in the long term is invariably what's right to do in the short term. And these are the types of arguments that we've been trying to make. You can't go to a place like Davos and be too bleeding heart about things, and whether you think that children deserve the right to become numerate or literate is one thing. But actually, in a place like Davos, you couch your arguments more in, actually, this is the smart thing. This is going to make the world better and more prosperous in the longer term. So that's the approach Street Child and other NGOs who are present were taking in their conversations.
Yeah. On the topic of defence spending, war, in terms of what's going on in Ukraine, obviously that would have been a major discussion point at Davos. And in terms of helping those, giving the attention to those children that are living through and continue to live through the war that is happening there. 4 years into it, are you optimistic about the situation and what you're seeing on the ground in Ukraine? Are things getting better? I know obviously there are still major issues happening in the country, and there are still, of course, bombs going off, attacks happening, but are things getting better from where they were 4 years ago?
The one thing when I speak to my Street Child colleagues in Ukraine, it's just a level of exhaustion, living under this degree of stress and concern and this state for so long is what's taking its toll, and I'm sure is among the factors which is pushing Zelensky and his administration towards what feels like a deal. Who knows? Education emergencies, child protection emergencies are core issues for Street Child as an organisation, and there are still children and it's from the most vulnerable families living in these settlements and towns in the close proximity to the contact line, and this is where Street Child is focusing our efforts for the last couple of years. Much is being done, and there's a limit to what can be done, and ultimately we need peace, but who knows whether peace will come next week or next year or further down the track. So meanwhile, we will continue to patch up schools that have been destroyed. We'll continue to provide digital education, and Street Child will continue to support teachers to stand in front of their classrooms in a kind of psychologically ready state to teach. The mental stress is what I spoke about at the start of this piece. You see it so clearly in teachers who are having to deal with the stress themselves. They've got their own private lives, and then they've got to stand in front of 30, 40, 50 children going through everything themselves. So Street Child has invested a lot of energy into training and preparing teachers to work in very stressful situations as we do around the world. Teachers, the unsung hero of children.
Just finally, Christine Lagarde, the President of the European Central Bank, warned about the impacts of growing wealth inequality. Do you share her concerns?
It's a great question. I think my concern, and my colleagues at Street Child would say, how can it be right for those at the bottom to get nothing, regardless of how big the gap is to the top, and regardless how wealthy those at the top are, to be in a situation where hundreds of millions of children in Africa get to the end of their education not being able to read their own name, not being able to recognize their own name on a piece of paper, let alone write it. And you go to a conference like Davos, and you have all these highfalutin conversations about AI and whatever, and it's really irrelevant to the lives which the poorest part of the population of the world are being brought up for. So that can't be right at all. There is no doubt that technologies such as AI, the tech revolution of the last 20 years, are generating enormous wealth. And clearly that should be being shared in a far fairer way. We have the resources in our world to make sure everyone can have the basics. Obviously, Street Child focuses on education, but I absolutely extend that to the most rudimentary of healthcare, and nutrition and water. And we should all feel uneasy for as long as we live in a world where a good section of the population does not have access to any of those basics. And the people that should feel the most uneasy are the people who've got the most degree of personal affluence, or who've got the biggest opportunity to make a difference. And you find all of those people in Davos, and that's why organisations like Street Child go to Davos and do everything we can to make the case.
That was Tom Dannatt, the founder and CEO of Street Child, speaking to me a little bit earlier.